History. Today I want to take you through a step-by-step installation of what we call a disappearing fountain. And when we refer to a disappearing fountain, it's the concept of a fountain, whether it's an urn or a large stone, with water bubbling over the top, and it appears that the water disappears into the ground, when actually the water is falling into a hidden reservoir. So to install a disappearing fountain, you need four main things. You need your reservoir. In this case, this is a 3 foot by 3 foot square reservoir. They also make these in round sizes. There's a 2 foot by 2 foot, a 4 foot by 4 foot. And typically the size of the pot or rock or whatever you decide to use will determine the size basin you need. So again, in this case, we're going to be using a 3 by 3 reservoir. So you need that. You need the feature piece. Well, in this case, we have a large blue pot, kind of an aqua color. So the water will get pumped up into this pot and over the sides using a recirculating pump. And finally, to make the basin disappear, you'll need a rock of some sort to put over the top of it. And that'll hide the entire basin, which gives it that really cool effect of where's the water going and keeps your maintenance very low. So next up, we're going to start digging the hole so I can show you how to properly install the basin level and securely. All right, everyone, we've got the hole dug. I want to just give you guys a couple quick tips on digging the hole. We like to use the spade shovel for the majority of the digging, but you'll find it's hard to get a nice smooth bottom with the spade shovel. So once we get most of the dirt out, then I'll come in with the flathead shovel and get a nice smooth bottom. To dig the hole the right size, the easiest thing to do is actually to get the basin and put it upside down where the hole is going to be. Then you can mark it all out. So we did that already with this one. The height of the basin is about 12 inches, so we dug a 12-inch hole. We want that basin to be about level with the height of the surrounding earth. So we're going to test fit it. As you can see, my level of gravel when I put the gravel back in here is probably right about the same height, maybe slightly higher than the edge of the basin. That's what I'm after on that. Very important thing to do though when doing a disappearing fountain basin is getting the basin as level as we can. So when looking at this, I'm a little high on this side. Sometimes there's a little bit of flex in the dirt. And I'm a little bit high here and high here. So what I like to do is after I do that first test fit, I'll pull the basin back out. And I like to use just some simple play sand that I'll put on the areas that I know is low. Since I was high here and high here, I'm going to put some sand on that side. So I'm going to take a few minutes making sure this basin's perfectly leveled, and then I'll get it backfilled around there, and then I'll show you guys how to properly install the cinder blocks, the grading, and then set up the pot. I just like to use a basic play sand to get the basin exactly level, because if you get the basin exactly level, it keeps as much water as possible in the basin, and it makes the pot level to have water flow evenly on all sides. So with my level, I determined that I was a little high on this back side and this near side, so I'll just add play sand in those front areas. I'll get it smoothed out here in a few minutes. I'll retest the basin. I'll backfill with sand in the voids around it, and then we can talk about how to install the cinder blocks, the grading, and then the pot itself. Alright, so we got the sand under the basin in the spots that I think we needed it, and I just want to verify to make sure the basin is level. So again, I'm going to run the level both ways, long ways and then this way. We're perfectly level this direction. Direction needs a little adjustment. So a lot of times you can just give it a little bit of articulation, grab a corner, tilt up, and you get it just right. So I've got it perfectly level this way. I'll double check here one more time. Looking perfect. So now we can move into installing the concrete blocks, the grading, and then the pot itself. So one of the nice things about a disappearing fountain is that they're supposed to be very low maintenance. So anything that we can do to keep you from having to get to that pump all the time is a good thing. Which is why I think this mesh also comes in handy, because it's going to help keep leaves and stuff from getting down in the basin and clogging the pump. Now when I get to this point of the installation, I've got the basin in its level, I've got my concrete blocks in to support my grading, I've cut the little hole out for my tubing to come through that's coming from my pump, I've got the mesh on there. At this point I like to go ahead and add water to the basin. because when you start standing on this, lifting a big pot onto it, you don't want to risk shifting it or getting it on level. So getting all that extra weight of water in there will help keep it nice and stable. So we'll give this a few minutes to fill up. And once it's nice and full, we'll be bringing the pot over here and actually showing you how to connect the tubing. And then at that point, we get to test the pump out. We'll plug it into our nearest outlet and see what it does. All right, everyone, we've got the basin full. You can see I've got the water right to the top of the grating. We've carried the pot over here. So now we're going to be connecting the tubing that's coming from the pump to the connection on the pot. You'll find most pots that are intended to be a fountain will already have the tubing and connection on there for you. You do want to make sure to use a clamp because you don't ever want that tubing to come off and you got to go and take everything apart again. So I'll get that tubing slid all the way up on that hose barb. And I just tighten down. Get the barb on all the way, clamp slid up over to the barb, tighten it all the way so it's nice and tight. At this point, I've got the pot lined up. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to hop on the other side and stand this up. I typically will have another person around to make sure that this lines up properly. Take that. All right, stand it up and twist it that way just a little bit. All right. So as I stood it up, I just made sure that that tubing went down into that little hole that I cut out in the center of the grating. At this point, we're going to plug the pump in to our nearest grounded outlet and see what our flow looks like before we adjust the valve on the pump. So the pump we chose for this fountain today is actually a 500 gallons per hour submersible pump. This pump is very energy efficient to use. It's not going to cost you a whole lot. This particular run runs off of 45 watts, so it's like having a light bulb on. We have found on these pumps they typically do last longer if they run all the time. It's the on and off that really wears the pumps out. But as you see, this is what's called a little ball valve. This allows us to, if we turn the fountain on, which we're about to do in a few minutes, if it's shooting too high and causing too much splash, I can just rotate this clockwise and slow that flow down. You'll also notice this pre-screen. This is going to keep large debris from getting into the pump and damaging the inner workings of the pump. Any little debris that can fit through those slits won't hurt the pump. It'll just push right on through. But this keeps the big stuff out. This, in conjunction with using the grating and the netting, really keeps big debris from really getting on here. We found typically once a year you need to open up that trap door, clean this off, and then you can fire everything back up again. All right, so our basin's in, and we just got the tubing connected from the pump to the pot. So at this point, I want to plug the pot on and see how much flow I have and if it's leveled or not. Okay. So right off the bat, you saw how high that water shot. The way these pots are designed, the water is able to collect for about 2 inches of water before it spills over. So putting your hand over it will knock down that initial surge of water. I can tell right now this water is hitting here and it's splashing out. I've got splash coming 2-3 feet away from the basin, so I know my flow is too heavy. So I'm simply going to reach my hand down into the trapdoor and turn that ball valve down. So now we've got about 3 to 4 inches of a plume of water, and I'm studying the splash pattern, and everything is being contained within the basin, and that's what we're after, because if water splashes outside of the basin, you're going to have to fill this thing up all the time, and that's no fun. So all of our water is contained. My pump is running properly, I've got the flow right. Now I can put my trap door on to protect the pump. At this point, I want to make sure my pot is level. Remember all that time we took getting the basin level? Almost always, even with the perfectly level basin, you'll need some minor adjustment getting the pot to flow just right. Visually, this pot looks pretty good. But what I like to do is I'll put my hands on either side of the pot and just see if it feels like the same amount of water is coming over. Opposite. That felt pretty good. On this side, I can feel there's a little more water coming over this side. I can see a little more splash. So what I'm going to do is we have these little shims. They're plastic shims. They're little wedges. So what I'll do is I know I'm a little bit low on this side. I'll lean the pot and I'll slide that shim under there. Now the pot actually feels a lot more stable. And let's check our flow. Perfect. I've got the right amount of flow on all sides of the pot. And what happens is when the pot is perfectly level, equal water goes on all sides, which means you don't have excessive splash in an area where, let's say, it was a little bit low. So this keeps the basin full longer. So our pot's in, our pump's adjusted, everything's level. At this point, we bring our rock topping over and cover the whole thing up and finish up.